Celia, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. Such a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So, Celia, before we get going with the business side of things, tell us a little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Oh, spare time. What's that? Um, well, for me, they're actually very interchangeable because I feel that I do for a living what it is that I enjoy. I really enjoy performing. I'm a trained actress by background, and before I trained, I was always in amateur dramatics. Even as a child, I was always showing off. And nowadays, I work in comedy, and I have my own one-woman shows. And to me, that is being paid to just have fun. So when I'm not doing that, I'm usually out watching some comedy or theatre, or just mixing with friends. And I'm married. My husband is here in the background, and we go out and we like to see London. We're very lucky to live quite centrally in London, and we love going for long walks and finding bits of London that we haven't seen before.
Amazing. So, tell us about your business. What is it that you do and what inspired you to start it?
Oh gosh, it was so long ago. I don't know if I can remember. It's a funny way of making a living. I essentially speak for a living. I'm a professional speaker these days, and I speak about communication skills and, in particular, sales and public speaking, presentation skills. And occasionally, I will speak on confidence and personal success as part of that. So I travel around mostly the UK, going to conferences and being usually the closing speaker. And that's because I've also over the last few years only become funny. I would say I wasn't funny before I was 40. Suddenly woke up at 40 and I was funny. So now that I've become more of an entertaining speaker as well as giving good content, I've moved from the morning slot to the graveyard slot to then being the closing speaker because basically no one wants to go on after me. So mostly I do that. I also stay on and host an award ceremony quite often in the evening because many conferences have both going on. And then as a bit of a support to that, I'm still sometimes running training days or individual coaching. So I might coach executives in speaking or be asked to come in and work with a team on their sales or on their speaking. Not as much as I used to. I used to basically have a training company. That's what I was running. And it's morphed into being a speaking business. So that's what I do. And then I'm also performing comedy and I'm trying to get better at that and make my way in that at the same time.
Well, you mentioned that you woke up at some point being funny. Was it really the case, or did you actually learn how to be funny?
I think that I'd been honing that skill socially for about 10 years during my 30s. I was living in Exeter in Devon for 10 years, from when I was 30 to when I was 40. And I was lucky enough to have a very strong circle of girlfriends that I still have. There are about 5 or 6 of us, and we used to hang out a lot together and go for meals. And it was a very secure group. And because of that security, I felt like I could experiment with being funny just in a social context. So basically started to develop into the one that makes everybody laugh, as a role. But that wasn't being expressed on stage as such. It was just, in my own life. And then in 2013, I've since about 2011, 2012, I've been a member of the Professional Speaking Association, the PSA, which you and I met at, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I'm now a fellow. Feel very proud of that. And so I've been with them for about 5 years, and that's done a lot to hone my craft and make me funnier because it's given me chances on stage to have a go at that. One of those first chances was a 5-minute chance to do some comedy at the main convention called Mega, and at the time it was in Salford near Manchester. And I got up, I did 5 minutes, and it went a lot better than I thought it would. And it suddenly clicked in my mind that, maybe I can do this. And as a result, the next year I went to train in cabaret in 2014. I'd already trained at drama school way back in 97. So I hadn't been professionally an actress since I was 30. I'd given up and fled to Devon. So then in 2014, I trained in cabaret. And I went on to make my own one-woman shows. So that is how I've developed into being a comedian, in effect. You can't sort of say that you were not funny at all and then you were funny. Of course, there is a gradual evolution. But when I was 25 and I was an actor had come up to me and rather cruelly said, "Let's face it, Celia, you're just not funny." And I really had unfortunately taken that to heart, and it really set me back. I think it was really another 15 years until I thought, maybe that's not true. Maybe I can be funny. So, and now I'm much more confident, I think, in defending that idea and saying, yes, women can be funny. And I'm very keen on following female comedians in particular as my inspiration. And if I was to name one, then I guess what I'm often likened to is Victoria Wood, because I'm a musical comedian. I write my own comedy songs, and I'm quite clean. I'm not really crude like her. You know, I'm very mainstream, and I can do both stand-up comedy and sketch acting and writing songs. So she's my absolute heroine, and I was very sad that we lost her last year.
So, Celia, throughout the business journey and entrepreneurial journey, we all come across a lot of challenges. What would you say was your greatest challenge, and how did you manage to overcome it?
I think the greatest challenge for most entrepreneurs is getting good at sales. I think that many of us have a dream of having a business, and we have a talent. And so we embark upon the adventure thinking that that talent is enough to carry us all of the way. And in fact, all of us come to a point of realization where the main skill set that you need is sales and marketing. And then it's just taken for granted that you have some sort of talent that you will then deliver. But if you're never able to sell it, you're never going to get to deliver it. And I think that is a harsh day for most people. They do go into business quite naive, you know, and I certainly did. I was an actress. And everybody who starts in business thinks that they don't have the skill set for it. They will say, oh, but I was a teacher, or I was an engineer, I was a ballet dancer, so therefore I can't do it. And I think actually we all start off sort of equally disadvantaged in terms of running a business. And we all just have to go through the painful curve of learning how to make sales. And for my first 2 years, really, of running the training company, which I started once I was 32, once I'd moved to Devon, I decided to go for it with my own business after being an actress. I didn't make any money for 2 years. And yet I did an awful lot of activity. So, you know, I was very, very busy, but broke. And I realized I just didn't know how to sell. And so I decided to study selling. And I read a book by Neil Rackham called Spin Selling, which is an excellent textbook of sales. And I started to teach selling, even though at the time I was rubbish at it. So I was only teaching the theory of it. But by teaching it, I learned how to do it. And then I closed some key sales, and then I was off. And then I've been really good at selling ever since, and to the point where I'm now asked to speak about sales.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know you speak about sales. That's incredible.
That I know it's like the best kept secret ever. I don't know why I don't advertise it, but I think it's because I want people to think of me as funny and essentially as an entertainer. And so I don't want to confuse that in the mind of the reader. So I just quietly get on with making money by teaching sales and don't really tell anyone about it.
Love it. So, Celia, obviously that was your greatest challenge and you overcame it by learning how to sell. What would you say was your greatest success in your business?
I feel like I'm still having them, actually. I feel like I'm almost like now is my greatest success, in that I've been a speaker for 7 years and suddenly it's got its own momentum. It amazes me that people ring me up and they say, we've heard a lot about you. And I think, how on earth have you heard a lot about me? I don't understand how that's happened. But there is just, a thing about being in the marketplace for long enough that you have a presence. I have quite a strong internet presence. I'm good at that stuff in terms of website and social media and newsletter. And so it gradually gets its own momentum. So I feel almost to say my greatest success is just beginning, where I feel I have developed a reputation and that reputation is starting to actually pay. So yeah, that's probably how I feel. I guess the other one would be whenever I've sold like bigger contracts. I remember after that 2 years of being broke, the very first thing I sold was something to the public sector where you think you'd never make any money. And in 1 year they spent £30,000 with me, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, that was just incredible to get off the starting blocks in such a good way. And that taught me that, continuity with businesses is a good thing. Being able to sell them longer programs or, some repeat business, and that repeat business is very, very profitable. And I tend to be very guilty of being a bit of a hunter. I tend to do one-offs. I go and speak for one client and do one thing, and then speak for lots and lots of new people, which is why I'm so good at sales. But what I really need to get back to is perhaps selling more continuity. That's a very clever thing to do in your business.
Yeah. So Celia, what would you say your typical day looks like?
Well, I barely get out of my pajamas, to be honest. I mean, I work at home. This is me at home. I'm in a flat in London, in Kennington, which is just south of the river. Really lovely area. So it's very nice actually to sit here. I always used to sit in Devon for 10 years. I used to work from home. So I'm a very seasoned home worker. I do start at 9 or thereabouts, and I pretty much work through till 6 p.m. at home, and I just take about an hour off to go out and have a walk and have some exercise. And I do eat meals, don't struggle too much with the structure of the day anymore, because I've been doing it for so many years. I have, in 21 years in the workplace, I've only ever had a job for 3 of those years. So most of my adult life has been self-employed. So I'm not out delivering every week. I probably ought to be, I ought to get myself into gear and go out a bit more often. But, with speaking, it's quite lucrative, and it's also quite tiring. You travel maybe a long distance, and then there's a lot of pressure to deliver a 1-hour speech that's really excellent. So I might spend a couple of days working on a speech and then go out and deliver it. So I'll be out about twice a month, probably somewhere in the UK delivering. And then there'll be these little bits and pieces of maybe coaching, some of which I can do online, Skype, or telephone calls. So largely I'm at home most of the time with some travel. And I really like that. And I tried to carve out a bit of time to read, to just keep developing myself. And part of my time is spent in mastermind groups where we get together and work on our businesses. And one Saturday every month I go to the London region of the PSA as well to get my input into my professional life. So yeah, it's quite relaxed. Relaxed. I'm sure there's something else I'm supposed to be doing.
So Celia, you mentioned that it can take you a couple of days to get together your speech, like 1 hour talk, or however many hours it is. Do you every time deliver a different speech? So for like each and every time you craft a totally like new something, or do you have like set sort of talks that you use?
Yeah, a bit of both. So I have a really set talk on sales, which is called I Promote. And it's a 5-step sales conversation that helps people to get a better conversion rate. And that just can go out as it is. And it's probably my most booked talk. However, I will still spend the equivalent of a day with the client by the time we've had a couple of phone calls about the event. And also, I ask them to send me their sales manual and all their sales training, so that I can read that, and then I dovetail in what I'm teaching with what they're teaching, so that I'm not then embarrassing the client by getting up and saying something contradictory to what they say. And also, I'm not just sounding like I'm giving a completely generic piece of training. I want to say, I understand how it is that you're sitting down with a prospect. Let's talk about it in that context. So I know they appreciate that level of professionalism in terms of tailoring it to them. And I also spend time with the client afterwards. I spoke on did that keynote about 2 weeks ago, and I'm still chatting to the client about how it's going with everyone. Are they doing it? What's the follow-up? And that's just all included. I'm just doing that because it's good to care about what happens with your speech, So that's what takes a bit of the time. And then, so that's most of the time I'm giving something standard. I also give speeches on speaking, and that will be fairly standard, but I'll tailor it for the conference. But then just a week ago, I wrote a completely new talk called The Funny Thing About Stress, because the NHS had asked me to come in and talk about stress, but be funny, which was a very daunting brief, I'm going to be honest with you. So I took a long time over that because I really cared about that going right. And it was only a 45-minute talk. But, you're still writing, I don't know, about, 6,000, 7,000 word speech, essentially, for that length of time. So, yeah, it takes a bit of work. But I love that academic side of it. I love writing. once wrote a crime novel just because I was bored.
Brilliant. Celia, where would you say you come up with your best ideas?
Definitely in water. There is this massive effect for me of water. All I have to do is get in the bath or go to a spa, which is a brilliant excuse. I never stop sparring. Like my husband thinks I'm like some shriveled prune, because I never stop. But yeah, as soon as I'm near water, I seem to get amazing ideas. So I'd recommend that to everyone if you haven't noticed that connection. I haven't researched this, but I did hear somewhere that there is genuinely an understanding in science that there is something that happens with the chemicals to do with water. So, and there's that apocryphal story of the eureka moment in the bath. And we don't know whether that was true or not, or whether it was just an early understanding of what water does for you. So that's what I do. And the other thing I do is I go and watch the best. I go and watch great comedy, or I watch great speaking. And that's what I love about being part of the PSA is every month I get to watch people speak. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I go to watch something, that part of my brain starts firing. Especially if my brain's gone a bit dead because I've been doing accounts or housework or something that's not to do with that creative brain. I went to see Fascinating Aida, who are a musical trio, a few years ago in Devon. And at the interval, I wrote a song because they were just, it was just making me make connections that I hadn't made before. So I would say watch the best and get thee to a swimming pool.
So Celia, you've been in a business for a long time, for quite a few years, and you got a lot of experience, knowledge, and wisdom. So out of your experience, what would be your top 3 tips and strategies that you could share with us today that we could take on board and help our business improve?
About being an entrepreneur, about running your own business.
Entrepreneur, yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've touched on them already, or some of them. The first one would be get really good at sales. Improve your sales ability and be honest with yourself about tracking those numbers, especially in the early days. You need to be looking at how many sales conversations are you having and how many are you closing. And I tracked that data for ages, and now I don't track it anymore because I just know it in my head. I can just tell where I am with it. But the other thing people fail the most at with sales is they simply don't have enough conversations. If they just had 5 more conversations per week or per month, then they would have a lot more money. And I think it's a very simple numbers game in that sense. So pay attention, tend your sales would be my first thing to say, first tip. My second tip would be keep showing up. Like, there is a kind of magic switch that goes off if you just show up enough, like often enough in the thing you're trying to do. If I just do enough comedy gigs, then people think that I'm a comedian. And it's interesting that when I first started doing comedy, people would say, like you did about sales, they go, oh, I didn't know you did comedy. And I thought, well, of course you don't know, because I've only just started. So I don't know that I do comedy, and I haven't shown up often enough for that to have got any traction. But, I've just kept showing up. I've had shows, it's in my newsletter, it's on my website's all now redesigned to show how much comedy I do, and, show reels and this and that. And now when I ask people, what do you know me for? They say, being funny. We know that you do cabaret and that you're the only cabaret-based speaker that we know. Great. And the same, that's why I don't kind of plug the sales so much. But if I just kept showing up, if you kept seeing me doing sales talks and being talked about like that, you would think, oh, Celia's a sales speaker. So it's amazing how you can sit at home a lot when you're doing this kind of thing and do a lot of sales and marketing from home. And that's very valid time. That desk work is very good. But there's nothing to beat actually showing up. Keep popping up in the right places where you want to be seen. Even if you're not being paid, just be a menace. Just bug people to death. Just do stuff for free, stalk people, turn up, and it will stick to you, that reputation of being that thing. So my first thing would be get good at sales. My second thing would be just keep showing up. And my third thing would be, I guess, keep working on yourself. So get enough input for yourself. because those first two things can be very draining. You know, if you're working hard on selling and you're working hard on what is effectively marketing, keeping showing up is essentially feeding your generation of leads and interest in you. So you're like putting out all the time on the sales and marketing front. You can not realize that you're not resourced yourself. So having a mentor, a coach, having a mastermind group, people who are in the same business as you that don't mind talking about what they charge and the problems they're having and helping you, having a support network, you know, whether that's your husband and friends and family, or whether it's like, for me, it's often, you know, the PSA, it's my tribe that I can go to and they will support me. That really is the third leg of the stool. And I think if that leg's not there, you will fall over eventually.
Thank you for that, Celia. What about like any kind of resources? Did you come across any resources that help you to run your business more effectively?
Yes, I mean, I read a lot. You know, I'm a massive fan of reading about it. I don't think there's any answer that isn't in a book, you know. So if you can consume, you know, ideally at least a book a month, if not a book a week. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs will say they read 5 books a day, which is brilliant. I'm just not quite that keen. But, you know, if you can read, I've got a whole bookshelf here of inspirational books that unlock different pieces of the puzzle. That's really vital. Obviously, there's a lot on the internet as well. There's a lot of free data. But in my early days, I really put a lot of store by having a professional business coach. You know, I had a number of different coaches, and there are people out there who can just give you that objective perspective on what you're doing. I would like to recommend Action Coach. I think they are very good. They're actually a franchise, but I've met quite a few different ones from Action Coach before. And I didn't work with them myself. I worked with an independent coach, but I like their philosophy. And I think somebody keeping you accountable and also just kind of bringing a bit of sanity to the proceedings is a good thing, but just don't spend too much on it. You know, I went a bit wild with coaching in my early days, and I'm afraid I did overspend. There's a lot of people out there who are teaching entrepreneurialism who are very glad to take your money off you, and many of them are good, but not all of them are good. And sometimes I feel there's a lot of promising kind of get rich quick, and I'm sorry to say I haven't met anyone that's got rich quick. So, you know, you get rich slowly. That's the facts of the matter. And if anyone tells you any different, then give them a wide berth.
So, how would you advise to choose or pick your coach?
I think you've got to get testimonials, you know, ask other people who've directly worked with them, what was it like, and chat to them themselves, see if there's a bit of chemistry between you, read around online. And I think also if you do set up with a coach, you know, just set some boundaries. Like, this is how long we're going to try it for, and this is what I expect from it. And if I'm not getting those results, then I will feel that I can stop working with you. You know, that's what I've learned to do over the years. It can be a bit of an open-ended arrangement, and you end up feeling guilty. It's a bit like having a cleaner, you know, and they're just not very good, but you don't feel you can let them go, you know. And it's like that. It's to actually, you know, if it's not working for you, there's got to be a good get out clause where you can just say, no, that's great, we've tried that, but it's not working for me. So I wouldn't sign up to work with a coach for more than 3 months before I knew how it was going. They say you can do anything in your business in 90 days. And I think that's absolutely true. I think you can make a difference in 1 quarter of a financial year. So if you're with a coach and it's not making any difference in a quarter, I would question whether that's the right coach for you.
Thank you. And you mentioned you read a lot. I heard from a lot of people that at some point of life they came across a book that changed their life. Did you have such a book yourself? And what was it?
The book is right here, and it's called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it's amazing. It's so fluidly written. It's very short. Look, so small. I'm quite lazy. And it says, conquer your hidden fear and take life to the next level. So he's very much a best-selling author, so he's already good at doing this. And he really talks about achieving your potential, you know, not being held back. And one of the fascinating things he talks about in this book is upper limiting behavior. So that as people start to get successful, they tend to self-sabotage. And that is the biggest barrier to their success, actually. And that was very helpful for me, because when I first started off in business, I was afraid of failure and I was afraid of success. So I was very hobbled by this because I was afraid at both ends. Basically, was fairly paralyzed. And I think now I'm not hardly afraid of both, really. I'm much more relaxed about everything now. But that takes a while, doesn't it, to develop yourself in that way. But certainly reading about this upper limiting behaviour was very useful language for me to realise, it's okay to be successful. You don't have to suddenly stab yourself in the back when things are going well.
So, Celia, again, like you've been in business for a long time and you came a long way. You're well known for what you do, you get clients, you're doing really well. What is next step for you? What's your next big goal, dream? And if there is a person listening today who could potentially help you get there, who would it be?
Well, I think that I would really like to become much better known in comedy. So from a B2C perspective, so actually audiences, the public knowing me. Because to be fair, I'm getting known in the speaking world. So as a corporate entertainer, I'm doing really well. So I get booked to speak and MC and do my cabaret. But there are people within conferences that know me, but I would say the public at large wouldn't have a clue. If you said who I was, they'd go, who? I haven't done enough gigs really. So yeah, I'd love to get better known in that. And my ideal would be to make my whole living from entertainment. So although I love conference speaking and that would still be a part of it, I would absolutely love to be in more creative projects. So on TV, in plays again, in comedy sketch shows, in a group of people that were doing something to do with comedy, and maybe having my own show and so on, and being able to tour and actually people buy the tickets. So that would be my long-term aim. And I would say that takes about 5 to 7 years. So I'm only about 2 years into doing that now. So I'm being quite patient about it. So if anyone was listening that was interested in being a promoter for me, or an agent, or who has somewhere that I can go and perform, particularly in London, but it can be elsewhere. The other big cities in particular are always of interest, like Manchester and Scotland and so on. So yeah, somewhere where they might be interested in seeing me perform either stand-up comedy or musical comedy, then that would be really nice. If anyone wants to give me my big break, then get in touch.
Amazing. So we're coming to the end of the show, but before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you would like to advise today, or give some other tips, or anything else that you would like to share with the listener?
I suppose, I have quite a lot of friends who are also self-employed and running businesses, and it can be very lonely, very isolating. And I think often when you're starting out, you hesitate to be honest about how things are going. And it's very easy to get into debt and to be very worried about how much money is going to come in. And you've got to take risks in business, and they don't always pay off. And I think if there's one thing I've learned, it's to have people that I trust around me where I can be totally honest. I can say I'm worried, or I'm not making enough money, and to realize that there is no shame in that everybody goes through that at some point, and that if you need to get a part-time job, or if you can't give up your day job yet to run your business, that's fine. Don't be embarrassed. It's actually far more common than you think. There's a lot of people out there saying that they make a lot of money, and it's not always the whole truth. So find some people that you can be honest with. Be honest. Don't bury your head in the sand and get into trouble. Just take it one step at a time and enjoy every piece of it. There's no real destination to this. You can build an amazing business and go bust. So don't be hooked on the destination. Just enjoy the journey.
Thank you, Celia. This has been amazing. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, my website is celiadelaney.co.uk, and it's very easy to find me on social media as well, on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. But it's probably best to just drop me an email. I'm still quite old school, quite like email. So yeah, just go on the website to see what I do, and then you can sign up to my newsletter there as well, which is just once a month, and is lots of rather fun things about comedy and shows and little bits of speaking tips.
Brilliant. Thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a great pleasure to have you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.